Just fix it in post.
Oh yeah, that's great, but we'll never use it.
There's no budget, and it was due like yesterday.
There's been a slight change in direction.
I promise, it's just one last revision.
Welcome to Just Fix It in Post, industry insights straight from the source. I'm your host, Sean Rice, and welcome. Today's guest is a YouTuber, amateur historian, old age pensioner, retired Toyotan. He was once called the godfather of TRD, and while at Toyota, launched all their fun cars such as the Supra, Celica, the MR2, the Taco, Tundra, 4Runner. In fact, he was in charge of marketing the launch for both their Spot sub-brands, TRD and GR, and worked on most of their motorsports efforts such as Formula One, WRC, WEC, NASCAR, and Formula Drift. If he can wake up from his typical nap, we might get some fun stories about these and other things. Ladies and gentlemen, Paul Czaplicki. Tell me a little bit about yourself. Tell me your origin story. How did you get to do what you do and all the little fun parts along the way? What did you do with your nap, of course?
Of course. So I was what is known as a salaryman, which is working for a Japanese company for my career. I did my undergrad at UCLA, my MBA from UC Irvine, and then I needed a job, as one does. I ended up applying for a spot at Toyota, knowing absolutely nothing about it, because this is the era pre-internet.
How old are you at this time, and where are you?
Oh, I was in California, so Toyota was based out of Torrance at the time. So I got a job in the warranty department, of all places, just processing forms, and once a week, I would go out and drive the forklift in the parts return area, which was actually great fun if you've never driven a forklift. It's a hoot. Then from there, I talked my way into product planning. Then the Japanese firms, they typically rotate you around because they want you to get a lot of experience. So I went from product planning to strategic planning to sales, incentives, marketing, and within marketing, I sat in just about every seat there is. So the website, TCOM, direct marketing, advertising, experiential marketing, social media, brand management, and paid media. And that was the quick tour. Oh, I was based also in Torrance, then Belgium for Toyota Europe, and also in Plano, Texas, when Toyota moved their headquarters there in the U.S. That's a third of a century compressed into like 30 seconds.
So you were at Toyota for your entire, basically, career.
Yeah, I was there 34 years.
What moments stick out to you from that entire experience?
Belgium. I love Belgium. What a great experience to be an expat, to go over there and work and learn about the market and the vehicles and the differences between U.S. and Europe. It was a great experience. Loved it. My youngest son was born there. He's a little Brussels sprout.
That's funny. The positions you were in, which one was the one where you felt like this key fits the whole the best?
It's obviously when I was in marketing. I loved marketing. Wasn't so keen on direct marketing because that's, how do you say that politely? Spam and junk mail. Advertising was fantastic. Experiential marketing was great. Getting out there and seeing people and interacting with products. The advertising role was what I loved the most. If
you can give me a little bit of like the process of that particular position in terms of, how a project would start, how it would end.
First step in the marketing department is the handoff of the product from product planning, which is at N-12, N being the first month of production. So at N12, you would get a briefing from product planning on, okay, here's the new fill in the blank widget. So from there, the role of brand manager, you'd create a marketing strategy deck. So in the strategy deck, you would have everything from what's the landscape, who are the competitors, who are the buyers, what are the buyer differences, what are the insights, what is projected to change, SWOT analysis, the typical MBA sort of analysis. And from what I understand, even though I've only been at Toyota, obviously there's a lot of rotation through the automotive world. So I've worked with everyone in just about every major company, and they all have the same processes, by the way. I can't speak for anything outside the automotive world, but this is what happens in the automotive world. Then as part of that strategy deck, you develop a persona. The last launch I did was the Supra. If you think about the Supra, it's an expensive sports car. So basically your audience is someone who could afford a third car that's essentially a toy. So the persona we developed was a midlife crisis dentist. So it sounds humorous, but if you think about it, it makes a lot of sense. It's someone who can afford to buy a Supra, someone who through the course of their life, maybe when they were younger, they saw the Fast and Furious and they wanted to get a Supra and couldn't. So that's the persona you take. There have been several reorgs through the company, and sometimes there was an independent advertising role, and other times it was folded into the brand management role. Toyota has 4 agencies of record. Saatchi & Saatchi, Keneal, who does Hispanic, Burrell, who does African American, and then Intertrend, who does Asian. So you brief the agencies, and not all agencies work on every launch. For instance, there are some products which tend not to be popular in a particular cohort. And they come off and they develop their ideas for what kind of assets to create. A lot will also depend on how much budget is allocated for a launch. So for a major product, you'll probably get 100 plus million. And that'll go into a lot of paid media with a percentage being allocated for the actual production. For smaller launches, for instance, on something like an FJ Cruiser or a Supra, which is more of a niche model, you don't get anywhere near that amount. So you have to start thinking about how are you going to bring this product to market? What's the most efficient way to target your potential buyer? And then what kind of assets do you need from there? You always need stills because Twitter.com is hungry for stills. So that's kind of the short form how to create a marketing strategy deck and bring something to market.
When this sort of brief, I guess, pops up on your desk, what's your process in terms of how you're going to market this vehicle with the amount of money that you've been given?
Well, the Supra, it surprised us because at the last minute they decided to use it as one of the Super Bowl spots. Before that, we had no idea that we were going to get a Super Bowl spot. Typically, that's reserved for your high volume models because you want to, obviously you want to sell a lot of product, and this is more of an image model. So if we ignore that, then it was a function of, okay, how do we identify where the persona, quote unquote, lives and market there? Because, for instance, you're looking at an older buyer of the Supra. So you wouldn't be advertising on TikTok, for instance, because TikTok, I'm sure as you know, skews very young and very female. And unless you're targeting, under 18-year-old young ladies for your product, you don't really need to spend any money on TikTok, for instance. So you use that process of elimination. It's not unlike being a conductor or of an orchestra, because you have all of these assets available. You could use. I could use the tubas. I could use the strings. I could use the cello. What you do is, for that particular target, what's the best combination, the most efficient combination of the various tools at your disposal to get to them? Some of the things that de facto we always do is auto shows. People pay to go look at cars. It's a fantastic opportunity to have it there. Experiential events. So Toyota sponsors a lot of things. Right now they're sponsoring the NFL, for instance. So that's a great opportunity to get product in front of people so they can actually see it. You'd look for various things that are always there. What we did that was so fun, and actually my favorite video was the Supra GR reveal video that I did with Sweatpants Media. And we used a director, a Top Gear director, Kit Lynch Robinson. He was great, fantastic. And we had so much fun because we approached it from the perspective of, since frankly, just between us, I knew I was retiring, so I could dial up my humor a little bit more than I usually did. So I started to explain to the team over the course of all of those years, all of the restrictions and the legal provisos we've had to deal with in order to create content. And so we kind of made it all into a tongue-in-cheek joke. And for those of you out there, we'll put the link below. You can go watch it.
That ended up being, I guess, currently to date, the most viewed video on YouTube that Toyota's ever created. Is that a correct statement that you could make?
For a video that corporations usually post, you're lucky to get a lot of views unless you pump a lot of money behind it, and even then. But this video, it's an overused term. It went viral, probably because we were in a way taking the mickey out of ourselves, as the industry as a whole, because it was caricatures of marketers and lawyers and corporate execs through the years with some inane comments, which were actually were true, by the way.
A product comes out, you're supposed to launch it, put it on these channels, hit these niche markets, try to market here, market that, get a little bit of specialty. But then there's the flip side of things where you kind of not necessarily go all in on something else completely different, but go outside of what everybody would normally approve or go with, and take a chance on ruffling some feathers in a way that you're able to accomplish a certain goal like you did with that particular video, as well as, piss people off at the same time. It's almost like if you don't have any haters, you're not doing it right. It's tough. When you have a full-time job and you're within an organization, there's politics, right? Like I worked at Disney for 3.5 years and I literally got moved around. I was like the king of reorg because like everybody was just dying to get rid of me. It was like the second my boss didn't want to do my idea, like, all right, well, I'll just go to the water cooler with the GM and tell him what I think. And he'll be like, great idea. And then I'll be like, all right, see ya. How do you navigate that in terms of being able to think outside the box, but at the same time, be able to do what you did?
To be clear, we would never denigrate or piss off the consumers. If there's any ruffling of feathers, it's more just internal, because corporations are very risk adverse, right? They're afraid of failure, and especially big corporations. Mid-management would rather not make a decision than make a decision and be wrong. So I was fortunate enough to usually work on the niche models for the brand, so that you had the core models, which everyone focused on, and that was always very serious. It was a wash, rinse, and repeat cycle. Then you had the smaller models where, you had more of an ability to do things that were different. So I was a direct report to Jim Farley for many years, and Jim was always willing to push the envelope. When I launched the FJ Cruiser, he basically told me he wanted me to do a launch with no TV and just focus on experiential. So we developed a 2-phase strategy for launching the FJ Cruiser. First phase was to focus on the hardcore off-roaders, to prove that we had a real off-roading truck, because we hadn't had a short wheelbase Land Cruiser-like vehicle since the FJ40 retired back in '83. So we wanted to convince the influencers, these hardcore off-roaders, because they're the guys talking about the water cooler, right? They're the ones who stand around the water cooler, and for the people who are not in the enthusiasts and into the automotive market all the time, they usually go to these influencers and say, hey, Joe, what do you think about this FJ Cruiser thing? So you want them to be saying positive things. It's interesting that companies spend hundreds of millions of dollars on advertising, but still, or at least it was true when I left a few years ago, the main source of information for buying a vehicle is usually from friends and family. So, you want to influence the influencers. And then the second phase was just to expose it to the wider audience. We did what I called the trail team program. We actually sent a bunch of professional drivers out, and they allowed test drives of the FJ off-road on the trails that the enthusiasts take on weekends. Needless to say, it had a lot of hurdles to get approved through the corporation. I had to go up to the office of the president to get it approved. The president at the time was Jim Lentz. Unfortunately, I worked for him as a direct report also. So he trusted the recommendation, and it ended up being a fantastic project. I love that project.
With the risks that you did take in marketing, when it succeeded, did it lead to then pushing the envelope on the next project, or was it or were they one-offs?
They were more one-offs, but especially if you remember, I mentioned earlier, at Twitter, they like to rotate people. So you'd always have crops of new bosses rotating through. And, one would leave, a new one would come in, and then you'd have to start all over with anything that was even a bit risky, although some were more open than others. It's like anything as a corporation, so you had some guys who are willing to accept crazy marketing ideas and others that were less than interested.
With a company like Toyota, who obviously the world's largest manufacturer of motor vehicles, I feel like the brand has a little bit of this nostalgia to it, which I feel like you use, when marketing products. It also has this, will last forever type thing. And I feel like you kind of get that. You kind of get it out of that classic Corolla commercial where the farmers are in the field, some girl with a pickup truck is like broken down and they're driving by and they're like, and she's like, will you help me? And they don't stop and they keep going. They're like, you ever seen a, Tacoma broken down or whatever like that? That's totally fake. So like stuff like that where they're using the stereotype of their brand is always lasting forever. In order to be successful in marketing, does it matter to have the sort of reputation that Toyota does in order to market products? Like, did you ever find yourself in a position where you were marketing something that, there's things like the Mirai or, products like that where they're kind of don't necessarily have a brand history or a reputation. I mean, they have obviously the reputation that the brand currently has, but they're stepping outside of their wheelhouse to do something different, hoping that their brand kind of like carries them in that direction. Like, where did you, there was the Prius C Persona series that we had done. There's a few like one-offs like that. What were kind of your angles on making those work or when it didn't work or,
Yeah, the Mirai is obviously launching a whole new category of propulsion, if you will. It's not unlike Prius because I launched the Prius also. And, that was the first hybrid powertrain. In terms of leveraging the strength of the brand, the first campaigns I did on Tacoma were actually unbreakable, with an unbreakable, which we took from if you remember Top Gear, they had a Hilux which they tried to destroy and it kept coming back to life. So we took that and did a series of tongue-in-cheek videos. For instance, the Tacoma gets hit by an asteroid and it survives. It gets taken by the Loch Ness Monster and it survives. So those sort of tongue-in-cheek playing on the brand attributes. With something like Prius, the launch of the Prius was very challenging because I launched it in Europe. The European market at the time, they were focused on diesel because they focused specifically on CO2 and not NOx in terms of, or particulates in terms of pollution. And so diesel actually had low CO2. As we know now, it spews out lots of carcinogenic particulates and it's high in other areas. So the challenge there was we had a hybrid with a petrol engine, and all the journalists kept asking me repeatedly during the launch why we didn't make it with a diesel. But remember, it was a world car, and the biggest market for that would be the U.S. So it made sense to have a petrol-powered car. It was just a challenge to get people to understand what a hybrid does. Of course, now hybrids are so ubiquitous. Everyone has a hybrid in their lineup. My wife's Corolla hybrid gets 47 miles per gallon. It's amazing. I've because my 4Runner gets 14 miles a gallon. So every time I get in her car, I'm just shocked. It's like, oh my gosh, this is fantastic. The Prius C that you talked about, that was an interesting program, and I apologize for making you shoot it at night. A black car at night. It was a really good idea, by the way.
It created a whole new genre of thing I was good at. So it, that nobody wanted to do. So it worked out.
Here was the challenge with the Prius C. I was actually working on trucks at the time, and they called me in to ask me for help. It seems like any time they had a vehicle that didn't fit neatly within a category, they would call me over and give it to me, either the fact that I didn't mind taking the risk for potential failure, or maybe a more positive way to look at it is maybe they thought I would think out of the box. I don't know. But the team created this vehicle that they wanted to target young women with. Now, initially, it was all pink. It was like a Pepto-Bismol colored pink. And I talked to the team. I said, "There's no way you're gonna that unless you pair up with Mary Kay. There's no way that a pink car will work. I mean, the last pink car that was successful was on Jerry Anderson's Thunderbirds, and that was a puppet show." So we went back and forth, and they eventually decided to make it black, and then highlights of pink, and then highlights of like a lime green. And it's like, okay, I can, sure, I'll launch that. With no budget, or very little budget, as you recall. So the challenge I had was, how do you target a younger demographic? And I looked at it and I said, this thing looks like a Monster energy can. So I rang up some of my friends over at Monster, and we did a cross promotion. In essence, what I did is I underwrote the filming of a series of videos with one of their female athletes, and they would push it through their social media channels because they have a huge social media footprint, and obviously they skew very young in terms of, well, young for automotive, for their demographics. So that's why we did that. And then I don't know how I thought up the Neon Museum in Las Vegas, but I just thought it would be a cool place to shoot. And then you were the only person I could think of who had the skill set to shoot a black car at night in a Neon Museum.
Right.
And I almost stayed up for the whole shoot.
It was brutal, though. Even after we had dodged 2 thunderstorms in the first part of the night.
Yeah, what's a little lightning when you have C-stands everywhere?
So, like with that one, you did the volcano climb. How did you, with the TRD Tundra, how did that come about? What's kind of the push and pull with product in terms of, in that process, where do they start bringing marketing into, hey, look what we made, can you sell this?
The official handoff is N-12, and being the start of production month. But typically, having worked in product planning, it's the marketing and product planning teams are fairly small. Well, they were. Okay, now marketing is around 150 people, and product planning is around 50, 75 or so. But in the old days, they weren't big, so you knew everybody. And when I started at Toyota, there were only 1,000 people in North American headquarters, so you kind of knew everyone in your area. So a lot of it is just informal. Sort of the Japanese phrases and nemawashi, where you just kind of bump into each other at the dining center and just, chat a bit. They will occasionally come, they being product planning, will occasionally go down to marketing and ask specific questions. And what marketing can do is they can do field surveys, they can do consumer surveys to help out product planning. So both a official pathway and unofficial. When we talk about the TRD series, so we have to jump back in time. I was working on a different set of products, and then they moved me over to truck again. They typically rotate you around products. And when I took over truck, there were like 7 or 8, I can't remember, different TRD packages. And like, I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed, and I couldn't remember what were in all of these packages. And if I can't remember, then how can a consumer who just pops into the automotive shopping market every few years, or even our dealers and salesmen, how can they remember? So I said, we just got to make it simple. So like anything else, you have to sell internally. There are 3 customers you have to think about when you're in corporate marketing. It's the actual consumer. It's the dealers, because unless you're Tesla, you have a dealer body. And it's your executives. So you have 3 groups of people, and that it's not always like that perfect alignment. It's a Venn diagram. There's overlap, but it's not always 100%. So in the case of these 7 or 8 packages, I said, I just have to simplify them. So for the internal sales pitch, I developed the concept of salsa, because everyone loves Mexican food. I love Mexican food too much. Just ask my wife. That's why I'm now on a diet. And salsa comes in 3 flavors: mild, medium, and spicy. So I said, TRD will now come in 3 flavors: mild, medium, and spicy. And so I just distilled down and rejiggered some of the content of the packages to make more sense. And then we have TRD Sport, TRD Off-Road, and then TRD Pro. So now we have a performance series. And I was able to work with the product planning team to have them go back and put on the old school TOYOTA on the grill. Because Toyota, when was it? Late 80s, early 90s, I can't remember. I was in product planning. Toyota went from a TOYOTA to the new sort of 3 oval ellipses. But truck guys love old school stuff. So we were able to get TOYOTA on the grill, and that took a lot of effort, by the way. And then for launching the Pro, it's a halo truck. We were limited in how many we could make. I think the factory was only capable of making up to 5,000 units. So we knew it would be short supply. As a halo model, what you want to do is you want to create an image of this truck to drive people into the showroom. And even if they can't buy the Pro, they can walk out with an off-road or a sport. And then I made all the parts available so people could buy them a la carte, like I did for my truck. Because I couldn't afford a Pro. I was just a poor salaryman. So with the Pro, you want something inspirational. You want inspiring. You want people to think that, and that's the best thing. And John Payne, who's the ECD at Saatchi, came up with the best tagline that we used for years, which is TRD Pro takes you to places that other people can only point to on a map. And to me, that's such an inspiring sort of thing. So then one of the big inspirations I had when I was younger in terms of marketing was BMW. They did BMW films. I don't know if you remember this. It was a series of small, essentially mini movies. I mean, they even had some A-list directors like Guy Ritchie. And these things were great. And they did it all in an era really before there was the YouTube. So now that you had this amazing platform for short videos, I worked with, John, who was a great partner at Saatchi. And we created the idea of doing these series of videos. And to make it cost effective, because we didn't have a lot of budget, we combined all of the Pro models together in a family. And that way it's, you get 3 vehicles promoted for the price of 1, or 4 vehicles, right? And so it made it very cost effective. I could pool the budget I had from all these different models together. So we started coming up with ideas of, hey, let's climb a volcano. It's like, well, okay. Or I wanted to drive on the Ho Chi Minh Trail in Vietnam because that's such an iconic thing for Americans. So it's like, oh, okay, let's go to Vietnam. And so we went to Chile, we went to Vietnam. We raced and, surprising me, won the Baja 1000. I didn't think we'd win, to be honest with you, but it was amazing. And they actually beat some real competitors like Rod Hall. So it was a series of these. Every year we would do a new challenge. And as we progress, I added more pro models to lineup. So we did a Pro Sequoia. After one of the truck engineers, he came to me and said, well, you have all these body on frame pros. Why don't you use the Sequoia? I was like, Sequoia, what do you? And then through the miracle of the Google, you look and see a lot of people modify their Sequoias to go off-road. It's like, oh, he's right. Come on. So that's why we added Sequoia. Going back to the TRD Pro Challenge. So yeah, that was the idea of making it inspirational. And those were really popular. People loved them.
I have a lot of friends that are into product development in terms of, grassroots, like engineering. It's kind of that scenario of like, if you build it, they will come. The idea is that you would create an environment where people get to exist and hang out and enjoy an experience together. And the product just happens to be a byproduct of that particular experience. Do you feel like Toyota works in that way where you have this culture of Toyota, the people enjoy what people do, and the product happens to be a byproduct of that experience, and there's like this feedback loop? You then further do research on that experience and then adjust the product accordingly, and then wash, rinse, repeat.
The role of a good product planner is to, you have to observe what's going on in the current environment and extrapolate that forward, because you're working on products coming out in like 4 years. I'll give you a for instance. When I was in product planning, at the time Toyota was selling, this was before the Tacoma, Toyota was selling the very originally named Toyota truck, and that was the marketing name. And it had a 4x2, which was a low riding version. And for those of us living in LA, a lot of the Gardeners always had little low riding 4x2s. Then they had the 4x4, which was raised up to accommodate the 31-inch tires. And I was leaving for work one day, and my Gardeners were out front, and I looked at their truck, and they had taken a lowered 4x2 and they jacked it up, put on the big tires, and because they wanted that look, but they didn't want the expense of getting all the powertrain, because there's money associated with four-wheel drive. So I went to work, and I started working with the chief engineer, and we developed the concept. We called it the pre-runner. So the pre-runner is a 4x2 that's jacked up from the factory to look like a 4x4. Of course, now they're all jacked up, if you will, so you don't have that differentiation by the time you did. And we're able to work on the price point, so it was substantially less than a 4x4, because not everybody needs four-wheel drive. I did put a rear locker on it, though, because I don't know if you're aware, most, if not, no, all of the trophy trucks that run Baja, for instance, or run, in Score or the Mint, they're all two-wheel drive. So people don't need four-wheel drive unless you're rock crawling. If you have good tires, ground clearance, and maybe a locker in case of disaster, you can get through most of what people do for off-roading. They're not a lot of folks who take their brand new $50,000 truck rock crawling because of the risk of damage. So it ended up being, as I mentioned, exceedingly popular. And it was driven by just observing what people are actually doing with their vehicles. One of the best learning experiences I had was when I was a young green pea in product planning, and they assigned me minivan. I'm like 24. I don't have a family. I don't drive a minivan. What do I know about this? And my boss sat me down and said, hey, It's not about you, because I don't care what you think. It's about that consumer. You have to be empathetic. You have to understand what the consumer wants and make all your decisions on this product accordingly. So that was the best product and marketing advice you can ever get. The worst is when you start thinking what you want to do, not what the consumer wants. And we've seen a lot of marketing disasters where people suddenly think that they're the consumer when they're not. The classic example is the $1 billion lost by InBev with Bud Light. And think about, all you do, okay, close your eyes, think about who's the Bud Light buyer. Okay. I think we all pretty much have a picture of who that is, even if we don't have data. At the time, the VP of Bud Light pivoted away from targeting that buyer to try to target a different buyer, which is always risky. And in this case, they didn't anticipate that their pivot to a new buyer would alienate the existing buyer. So they didn't successfully pivot, and yet they lost their original buyer. So it was a complete, total disaster. So again, it's not about you and your likes. It's about what is the consumer looking for and what will appeal to them. That's the key foundation of successful marketing, in my opinion.
I feel like a lot of agencies aren't coming together into one particular building to create campaigns together. There's a lot of working from home, or they have meetings through Zoom. Plus you have changes in social. You have the possibility of TikTok going away. You have streaming, which is now doing an ad tier, an advertising tier to that particular aspect, which seems like it will be a little bit more likely, especially with all of the streaming channels that are available, and then their costs going up. It seems like the ad tier is definitely more affordable. And then you have, like when you pause the TV, there's advertising. When your computer or when your TV goes to sleep, there's advertising. You have Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Twitter. And then you also have an election that's going on right now. Like your example with Bud Light. It seems like there's a bit of an issue where you can create advertising content for one consumer while offending another, and vice versa. So it's hard to create non-divisive advertising content. And then with AI, a little bit of this oversaturation in terms of the shock value has gone away, and you have to maybe lean a little bit more on culture and being classic as opposed to viral and being instant. That way there's a little bit more longevity with the content you're creating. Because I notice even now with Toyota, the ads that kind of come up on my Facebook are the ones where they're taking a celebrity on a road trip and just kind of letting them figure it out with, like a Land Cruiser or whatever. So I'd love to hear your take on the way things are now and what you kind of see the future being.
You're absolutely right about content. One of the things that Toyota had, which I think was really smart, is they had an advisory council that we would run all of our ideas past. And it had the members of the advisory council, they represented all the different aspects you could hope for in society, because you want that sort of feedback. You don't want to make a major mistake. So the idea is to offend no one. Toyota was always apolitical, right? Not to go for any or be seen to endorse any particular position. Because I think it was it Michael Jordan who once mentioned, he goes like, hey, look, he doesn't bring politics to anything he does because, you're always going to offend half the population, and half that population buy shoes. So, which is a brilliant thing. And yes, you're right. There's so many more channels that you can have advertising on now, and that what you have to look at, though, is what is the effectiveness? Because sometimes, the click-through rates are usually phenomenally low for anything online. You'd be surprised, but traditional broadcast can still be effective because that demographic are usually car buyers, right? So that's why the biggest advertisers, are usually like drug companies and car companies, because that's their buyer still watching TV. The use of influencers is always risky because you never know. I mean, you could have someone that even after the screen seems pretty normal, and then a week later will do something absolutely nuts. That's always the problem, even with celebrity endorsements too, or celebrities in spots. And I did see that Land Cruiser stuff, and that was their current campaign. It was their current digital campaign was popping celebs in and letting them go, which I've seen some of them. They're pretty cool.
The Super Bowl is kind of something that everybody puts a lot of money into because it's probably one of the most viewed TV events for commercials. And then, what are the other outlets for advertising in terms of, getting a product out there?
I see the same thing that you do. Is a lot of these streaming services, everyone, after Netflix, everyone decided, oh, wait, we have a lot of content. So you had everyone start up their own streaming service like Paramount and Disney, et cetera, and Hulu, but then suddenly you had too many. So what I think the phenomena there is, what you see is people don't keep a streaming service forever. They probably rotate through them and binge watch whatever they want on that particular streaming service and then move on. But for those guys to survive, you're absolutely right, they're starting to sell advertising. So you're seeing advertising crop up everywhere. And for folks out there, I apologize, as an ex-advertiser, we're just trying to sell our product. So we're looking for any outlet we can get eyeballs on.
AI is big right now. It's, I just noticed the other day, there's, Adobe released an app literally where you don't have to be a designer. You type in what kind of design you're looking for with the information you need to input in it. You literally do that. It'll give you variations. You select the one and then put the information into it and you're done. No need for a graphic designer. There's now AI apps that literally let you kind of, for motion, let you dictate what you're looking for. I follow a subreddit on Reddit for AI creation, and people are creating like food commercials with video descriptions, using AI voiceovers. I've done an internal video for on the life cycle of lithium ion batteries as well as nickel metal hydride batteries. My voice is converted to somebody else's. The art was all created with AI and then edited with video templates that I'm sure you could probably type up now to be able to create. How do you see that affecting somebody like Toyota and what the future might hold with that?
The impact will more be on the ad agencies, because at the end of the day, the client side, right? They're the ones who, whether it's created by a robot or a person, they're the ones who sign off and give final approval and blessing to any product. So asset creation agency, they'll be affected. To what degree, I don't know. It's not my area of expertise. You'll probably lose a lot of the junior roles, I would think, and the art directors or creative directors will probably be the ones controlling the AI and making the assets. So far fewer people might be needed. And in terms of a career for someone coming up into agency life, it'll probably be harder to get in. That would be my guess, but it's not, not an area that I know a lot about. I'm old school.
But in terms of a brand, it feels like, and even from the content that Toyota has created, that they're very much rooted in connecting with the consumer's experience in a real environment, in a real setting. Would something like AI lend itself to content for Toyota, or opportunity specific, or what does that look like for a company like Toyota?
I would imagine you would treat it like you would any other tool, whether it's like some post-work in Photoshop, or you have a vehicle in front of a green screen, or whatever they currently do, and have the background projected. Or even, I know when I was on TCOM, we used CAD data to create the little jelly beans and little 360 spin things. I would look towards the agencies to use it as just another tool in their tool chest, right? Just as they would when I was there. It was all about Photoshop. Because I always ask you to Photoshop things for me, because you're the best. You're the best at that. If we're gonna have anything that had a lot, we would hire you.
I remember specifically flying to Germany with a rig to do rig shots for a particular 86 vehicle launch. And the look on your face when they dropped the door on the trailer, and you're like, it doesn't have racing stripes on it. You look directly at me. It's literally sunrise in Germany after having filmed Jay Leno for 3 days in Vegas. You look at me and you said, but you can fix that. Like it was not like it was a surprise non-issue. And next thing you know, I'm putting racing stripes in post on a car as the images are due literally the next day. In my hotel room in Munich.
Yeah. Sorry. I did have the stripes flown out later, though, and we did add them.
They were added.
We did. I think we added it the night before the press reveal.
Yeah.
And the weather was freezing. And the stripes don't like to be put on in frozen weather, I've discovered.
We'll get to learn Ausfahrt, which was very nice. So
Ausfahrt, yes. And for those people at home, Ausfahrt is exit.
Yes.
So it says exit Ausfahrt on every exit of the Autobahn.
All right. Well, I guess that leads us up to 10 questions.
It's time for
10 questions. Is that a yes or no, or what do you think?
10 questions. Stump the dummy.
Here we go. All right. What is your favorite brand?
It's like asking your favorite color, because a lot of it will depend on the day and the event. My favorite brand? Well, everyone expects me to say Toyota, so I'm trying to think of something other than Toyota, because I spent so many years at Toyota. How about, we'll do this one. Okay, we'll do something different. How about Chimay? Chimay is a Trappist beer. How's that?
That's perfect. Print or digital?
In terms of reading or watching?
Print advertising or digital advertising?
Digital all the way.
Digital. Okay.
I love digital. I think that people, well, of course the visual medium is key, but people, I think, resonate more with moving pictures.
Interesting. So, question regarding that: why don't they completely get rid of still imagery? Well, for me, it's hard for the consumer to kind of imagine themselves in a vehicle if they don't have a static image to look at it. Like, people can see commercials all day long, but if they don't have something to actually look at to imagine what their family would look like getting in and out of it or sitting inside, then it's maybe a slightly more disconnect to the consumer than something that's more aspirational, like a video. What are your thoughts on that?
Sorry, I'm going to pull out a typical MBA construct. There's something called the Allison Fisher purchase funnel. So think of an inverted funnel, if you will.
Got it.
So you start at the very top, and a consumer is only vaguely aware of the brand or the product. And then as they go farther down the purchase funnel, eventually they get more aware of the product. They go into consideration. They go into the shopping mode, and then hopefully they buy. And the pyramid is inverted because, let's face it, I mean, how many people are not unaware of Toyota? Well, I mean, it's the population is aware, but you have to keep moving down the consideration purchase funnel. So given that, digital creates that sort of cool ambiance that maybe, hopefully, drives them down the purchase funnel. Most people use the interwebs to shop these days. So they'll go to your website, and your website has to have static images because you just need a lot of those images and a lot of those images because people want to see every aspect before they go to a dealership. Going to a dealership is it's a scary prospect for a lot of people because, you have the salesmen who are on commission and naturally they're interested in selling you a car that day. So just to go in and kick the tires is difficult. So yes, are still images still important? Absolutely. You can't do away with them. But for me, what did I enjoy working on? I enjoyed the digital aspect more.
So next we have coffee or tea.
A lot of coffee in the morning and then a lot of green tea at night. So I'm horrible. I do both.
Nice. Biggest marketing trend right now?
TikTok. It gets just amazing number of views. I'd still love to see their demographics. Again, I left the firm, 3-4 years ago. And at that time when I left, I was in social media. And as I mentioned earlier, TikTok skewed really young. I don't know if they still do, but I'd love to see their demos. When I talk to my friends who have younger children, they are TikTok and Snapchat, which I find fascinating.
What's your first social media check of the day?
I have a very strange information gathering process. So I start with the BBC, then I go to local news, either KTLA or KABC. Then I go to even more local news, which is the Daily Breeze for those of us in the South Bay. It is literally the local paper. Then I pop over to Asahi Shimbun to see what's happening in Asia, and then Australian broadcast.
I thought you'd be like, I get on top of my roof, I look around, I see what the neighbors are doing.
And then I end on Al Jazeera. So I'm interested in seeing all the different perspectives of what's happening. I'm not sure I trust a lot of the mainstream media anymore. In the U.S., they all seem slanted one way or the other. So I like to try to navigate between all the different ideas. So it gives me at least some idea what's happening.
Do you have a preferred color for branding?
So Twitter was red. So I got used to red a lot. A lot red. They tried creating a sub-brand for truck using yellow and black, and it had a stylized letter T that looked like a bolt. But when I took over truck, I killed it because it had like no brand recognition, and everything we were doing was getting misattributed to Ford, which is bad because when you spend money, you don't want misattribution. So it's the Toyota red or silver. If you're going sophisticated, use like a silver background.
So superpower you wish you had?
Because superpower I wish I had. Everything that Superman has. He's like the classic superhero, right? I mean, was he the first superhero? I don't even know.
I don't know.
He flies around, he's fast, he's strong.
Wasn't Jesus the first superhero? I mean, the guy could do everything.
I suppose, okay. But, hey, the beauty of Superman, though, is, he's like the most attractive guy, and then he puts on glasses, he becomes unrecognizable. That'd be great.
One word to describe the future of marketing.
Exciting, actually. I think to your point, all of these new channels, all of these new tools just gives you opportunities to do more things and more exciting things than what we've done in the past. When I started in advertising, they were still using film. They shot everything on 35 millimeter Panavisions or the Hasselblad mid-size format cameras. I mean, and that was Photoshop in the early days. It was like, oh, you can actually remove something from a photo. How amazing. So just imagine all the technology and what they can do in the future. I mean, the stuff with drones, and that's like old school, but I'm always blown away about all of the shots we were getting near the end with drones, which is fantastic. And I think you lost a drone on one of our shoots too, didn't you?
Actually, I was the backup to a drone that had crashed.
Oh, that's right. That was the Leno shoot.
Denied the job of drone operator, and I was sitting there like, then they came to me and they're like, So we know we said no, but and we blew our budget on the guys that crashed. Are you available?
Oh yeah, that was one of the Leno shoots. I remember that now. Yeah, because I was standing near the drone op behind him because I was fascinated by it, and it came auguring in, and it was like, I don't think it's supposed to come in that fast. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, they were just testing. It was, I think it was what? It was like $10,000 for the day, and the thing flew up, and one of the batteries slipped out, and it just went, and then, I came in with my little DJI. And I think it was like, we got $500. Take it or leave it.
I was on a shoot with the BBC, and they had a drone crash too, and the drone guy was just he was devastated. You just forgot how this I feel for him. It's like, dude, man, wow.
Your favorite city for inspiration?
Ireland is a fantastic country. I haven't been there in a quarter century though, but I loved Ireland. I loved Australia because I have so many Australian friends. New Zealand is fantastic. Belgium, of course, will always have a special place in my heart.
Your go-to app?
YouTube.
Knowing what you know now and all of your experience, what would you tell your younger self?
That maybe you don't need to share your opinion all the time in corporate meetings, because not everyone is necessarily interested in it. One of the VPs I worked for, he was great, and it was interesting. So I was in a meeting, and I shared my opinion about a particular topic. And he stopped the meeting, and I was the lowest level on this meeting, so it was all, high level. I stopped the meeting, and he just looked at me and goes, I'm not the smartest guy in the room, Paul, but I can read the org chart. It was like, it's like, yeah, memo to self. Maybe even though I was probably right, because I usually was. Just tell myself, God gives you 2 ears and 1 mouth. Maybe you should use it in that ratio. Those people starting up out there, sometimes let it ride.
So what advice would you have for somebody who is getting into advertising and getting into marketing?
So we talked a little bit about the agency life. From my observations, since I had 4 agencies of record I work with. Boy, that's a tough life, man. For those people, I've noticed that for them to get ahead, they do a lot of hopping between agencies. So if you're that kind of person who's good with moving a lot, then maybe that's for you. I wasn't. I don't think I could have changed companies like that. For those people looking on the corporate side, just understand that the wheels of the corporation move very slowly, and something as like the automotive world, which is, you're entering a business that is very mature, so you're not going to expect a lot of movement, and they don't like specialists for the most part. So if you want to stay in corporate marketing, understand that there's going to be a ceiling above which you will not get promoted. Right. So at least that's true for Toyota. So that would be the things for people to realize. But, those aren't the only categories, right? There's CPG, there's drug companies, there's all sorts of things that everybody requires marketing. And marketing and PR are starting to merge together. So there are opportunities there. And it's fun. I loved it. If I didn't love it, I wouldn't have stayed a third of a century.
What's by far the coolest thing you ever did? Like, what was like one of those moments where you're in something and you couldn't believe, you had come from where you'd come to this point and were able to accomplish?
Doing the Vietnam shoot, that was a brutal shoot because we were literally in the jungle for a lot of it, and at any given moment, most of the crew would be getting sick just because you're in the jungle. There were a lot of challenges in that shoot, but the final product was great. And we bought some pre-roll, if you will, so some in-theater advertising. And ironically, we didn't know this, but we ended up shooting on the same set as King Kong Skull Island as we were driving through Vietnam. And so it actually, our ad for the Vietnam TRD Pro played right before King Kong Skull Island. So I actually went to the movie theater and saw it on the big screen, and it was like, that's it. That's content that I was responsible for financially. And it was up there on the big screen. That was the coolest thing. That's the closest I'll ever get to be a Hollywood mogul.
That's pretty awesome. Is there anybody that you would like to thank or that you owe a debt of gratitude to?
Bruce Quisenberry hired me into product planning from warranty, because I was in that, as I mentioned, warranty for 6 months. And I entered product planning, and that changed the direction of my life. So I am so appreciative to him for, seeing this crazy kid and taking a chance on someone with no previous planning experience. Also, Jim Farley. I was a direct report to Jim for, I don't know, maybe like 10 years, but he brought me down to marketing. He brought me over to Europe, put me in places in marketing when I came back that allowed me to grow and expand. So he would probably be the one of the big influences in my career, and I'm forever thankful for him for giving me those chances.
That's cool. So what are you up to? What are you up to now? Where can people see you in action, get a hold of you, check you out?
A pretty big deal on YouTube, by the way. I don't know if you're aware. I'm a massive influencer. I think I have amassed up to 10 followers now, maybe 11. My YouTube content is eclectic. I just do weird things, and it's not because I want to become an influencer. Far from it. Ray, Ray, my son.
Yeah.
So he's currently a video editor up at Google. So I wanted to learn something that allows us to talk about stuff as opposed to the typical, father-son calls like, hey, how you doing? Oh, yeah, good. Anything new? No. All right, talk to you next week. So this way I can call him up and bug him about, hey, how do you do? That's why I refuse to actually read the manual of software, how to use it. So I either call Ray and bug him, or I just play around. So that's why I'm doing the YouTube. I also have been doing some projects, ad hoc projects, which what a hoot. So I just finished one for which was kind of neat.
Ooh.
I did a project for a team on a proposal for I did some stuff for God. Of course, that, like anything else, unfortunately, none of it seemed to have panned out. But at least it was fun to learn about all those different segments, because I didn't know a lot about, for instance, the guitar market until I started doing some of this, or I didn't know a lot about, side-by-sides. So doing stuff like that keeps the brain alive. I've also started volunteering with the city and volunteering with the U.S. Coast Guard. So, at a certain point in your life, you want to start giving back. So now I'm going to do fun projects, give back, and become a massive YouTube influencer. So those
What's
are my
the YouTube channel?
PCZ TV.
Well, thank you for your time. I appreciate you and what you bring to the table and what you've done with my career. And I appreciate having you on.
You're a great shooter. I always enjoyed working with you, and you always delivered. That's why I kept hiring you, because you never failed me.
It only takes one failure, right?
The sad thing is, I've worked with a lot of famous auto shooters, and if they don't deliver, I can't take the risk to hire them again. So, sorry, but you never failed me. You always, even when the fires raged through the set we were going to shoot, and we had to pivot, and you bought the 86, right?
Right,
And
yeah.
we shot at an airfield, and he bought a tree.
Christmas trees. Yeah, for the reflections, so it would look real.
Yeah. I remember that. Thank you for all your work for all those years.
Yeah, it was fun. It's definitely the highlight of my career, for sure.
Just fix it in post.